A simple trip to the store. That's all it was supposed to be. No drama, no excitement, just a quick stop to grab a few things and head back home. But sometimes, the smallest moments can turn into something much bigger, something that reminds you that the world isn't always as simple as it seems. It was a chilly afternoon, and the sun was already starting to dip below the horizon. The streets were quiet, just the occasional car passing by, headlights flickering against the pavement. I wasn't in a rush, but I wasn't planning to waste time either. My list was simple: a Coke, a Sprite, and some gum. Just a few bucks in and out. The store was one of those small corner shops that felt like they had been there forever. Old shelves stocked with everything from snacks to batteries, cheap plastic toys hanging from racks near the entrance, and a faint smell of cardboard and something fried lingering in the air. The bell above the door gave a weak jingle as I stepped inside. Behind the counter, the shopkeeper barely glanced up. He was an older man, maybe in his 50s, with deep lines on his face and an expression that screamed exhaustion. He had the look of someone who had been running this place for years, watching countless customers walk in and out, never really paying attention to them. I grabbed what I needed quickly and walked up to the counter. The shopkeeper scanned the items with the same tired expression, barely acknowledging me. $10, he muttered. That seemed about right. I pulled out my card and tapped it against the reader. Declined. I blinked, confused. That didn't make sense. I knew for a fact I had money in my account. My card had worked fine all day. On the bus, at school, even when I bought lunch a few hours ago. The shopkeeper barely reacted. Try again? I hesitated for a second, but shrugged it off. Maybe it was just a glitch. I tapped my card a second time. This time it went through. The machine beeped, and the receipt printed out like normal. Relief washed over me as I grabbed my bag, ready to leave. But something felt wrong. At first, I couldn't put my finger on it. It was just a feeling, like a small itch in the back of my mind that wouldn't go away. I glanced at the shopkeeper, but he was already turning away, acting like nothing had happened. That's when it hit me. His reaction was too casual. Most people, when a transaction gets declined, will react in some way. Maybe they'll ask if you have another card. Maybe they'll check their machine. Something. But this guy? Nothing. Just a simple try again with zero concern. My gut told me something wasn't right. And that's when I remembered something my dad always told me. Always check your receipts. So, I turned back to the counter. Can I get the decline receipt? The shopkeeper froze for just a second. Just long enough for me to notice. Then he quickly reached for the printer and tore off a slip, handing it to me. But when I looked at it, my stomach twisted. It wasn't the customer copy. It was the merchant copy. Now, if you don't know, there are usually two types of receipts for a transaction. One for the merchant and one for the customer. The merchant copy doesn't always show the full details of what happened. The customer copy, on the other hand, is the real proof. I looked back at the shopkeeper. Can I get the customer copy? His hesitation lasted just a second too long. That was my second red flag. When he finally handed it to me, I scanned it quickly, and my heart skipped a beat. The transaction numbers were different. That meant one thing. I had been charged twice. For a second, I just stood there, staring at the receipts in my hand. My brain was racing, trying to process what I was looking at. Two different transaction numbers. Two separate charges. I had paid twice. I took a slow breath, steadying myself. I was only 16, but I wasn't stupid. And I definitely wasn't about to let this slide. I looked up at the shopkeeper. His face was blank, but there was something behind his eyes now, something cautious. Like he was waiting to see what I would do next. I tapped the counter with the receipt. Hey man, you charged me twice. He blinked, then shrugged like it was no big deal. No, I didn't. I felt my jaw tighten. Yeah, you did. Look, I held up the two receipts. The transaction numbers don't match. That means the first one actually went through, and then you charged me again. His eyes flickered to the paper for half a second before he looked away. Must be a mistake. Bank error. A mistake? A bank error? I wasn't buying it. Right, I said slowly. So, if I check my bank app right now, I won't see two charges? He didn't say anything. I pulled out my phone and dialed my dad. He answered almost immediately. Hey, Dad, can you check my bank app? I think I got charged twice at this store. There was a pause. Then my dad's voice came back, calm but firm. Yeah, I see two $10 charges, back to back. I looked back at the shopkeeper. So, still a mistake. His mouth pressed into a thin line. For a moment, I thought he might actually argue, might try to push back. But then something changed. Maybe it was the way I stood my ground, or maybe it was because he realized I wasn't just going to drop it. With a sigh, he reached into the register, pulled out a crisp $10 bill, and slid it across the counter. No apology, no explanation, just guilt. I picked up the bill and stared at him. That was fast, I said. If it was really just a mistake, why didn't you check first? He didn't answer. And that's when it really hit me. This wasn't a mistake. This was something he had done before. How many people had he scammed like this? How many people had just walked out, never realizing they had been charged twice? I clenched my teeth, debating whether I should call him out further. But before I could, something else happened. The door jingled as another customer walked in. A woman maybe in her late 30s, carrying a reusable shopping bag. She smiled politely as she approached the counter, not even looking at me. The shopkeeper straightened up a little, like he was trying to act normal. I stepped to the side, watching closely as she placed a few items on the counter. A bottle of water, a bag of chips, a lottery ticket. He rang them up without a word. "That'll be $7.50, he muttered. She nodded, pulled out her card, and tapped it against the reader. "Declined." I stiffened. The woman frowned, clearly confused. "Oh, that's weird. Let me try again." She tapped her card a second time. "Approved." My stomach twisted. No way. I glanced at the shopkeeper. His expression was the same as before, bored, indifferent. But now I knew better. I knew what he was doing. I had just seen this happen to me. I had just caught him pulling the exact same trick. And now, he was trying it again. I hesitated for half a second before stepping forward. "Hey, ma'am," I said, my voice steady but firm. "You should check your receipt." The woman blinked at me, surprised. "Huh? Check your receipt," I repeated. "Make sure you weren't charged twice." She looked confused, but turned to the shopkeeper. Yeah, actually, can I see the declined receipt?" The shopkeeper stiffened. That was it. That was all the confirmation I needed. He hesitated just a little too long before ripping a receipt off the machine and handing it to her. But I could already tell. He had done the same thing to her that he did to me. She looked at the slip, frowning. "Wait a second, these numbers are different." I saw the exact moment she realized what had happened. Her expression darkened, and she turned back to him, her voice sharp. "Did you charge me twice?" The shopkeeper opened his mouth, then closed it again. He looked trapped. For the first time, a flicker of panic crossed his face. Because now it wasn't just me. It wasn't just some kid calling him out. Now, there was another customer. A witness. And she wasn't happy. The woman turned to me. "Did this happen to you too?" "Yeah," I said. "That's how I caught it." She narrowed her eyes at the shopkeeper. "You need to refund me. Right now." By this point, the tension in the store was thick. The shopkeeper was visibly uncomfortable, shifting from foot to foot, probably realizing that his little scam was unraveling fast. Then, before either of us could say another word, the bell above the door jingled again. A tall man in a uniform stepped inside. Security. Turns out, the woman had already called for help the moment she suspected something was wrong. The shopkeeper paled. The next few minutes were a blur. The security officer asked a few questions, checked the receipts, and quickly figured out what was going on. The woman got her refund. I got mine. And the shopkeeper? Well, let's just say he had a very long conversation with the officer before I left. As I stepped outside, I felt a mix of emotions, relief, satisfaction, and just a bit of shock. All of this started because I decided to check a receipt. One small moment. One little instinct. And it unraveled something much bigger. I pulled out my phone and texted my dad. "You won't believe what just happened." And as I walked away, I thought to myself, this guy messed with the wrong customer. Final lesson. Always check your receipts. This entire experience taught me something important. You always have to pay attention. Whether it's a small shop or a big store, whether you're buying something cheap or expensive, scams can happen anywhere. So if something feels off, trust your gut. Ask questions. Demand proof. And don't let anyone take advantage of you just because they think you won't notice. And to that shopkeeper? Nice try. But today, you got caught. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to subscribe to Snag the Story. We bring you the craziest, most jaw-dropping real-life experiences. Like the video. Drop a comment below if you've ever had a similar experience, and turn on notifications so you never miss a story.